Hi, Steve. Thanks for joining me today. Thank you. I'd just like to start by asking you what you do, what is your business, and how long you've had that business?
Okay, so my primary business is 360 Exec. It's an executive search business that works globally in and around the world of communications, marketing, and advertising. I've been running that business for about 19 years. I bought it out of a PLC that I ran. I floated a group onto the stock market back in 2008, and I wanted to be more focused on changing things at board level. So we created 360, and I bought that business out. So it's one of a number of businesses I oversee, but it's one that I wholly own.
Okay, thank you. So if you were looking back in those 19 years and there was one biggest learning, what would you say that would be?
As a business leader or as business owner,
Yeah.
I would say you have to look to yourself. You've got to be able to look in the mirror, look into your own eyes, understand your own truths, and stay true to yourself. You've got to recognize that to run a business, you've got to be incredibly resilient, fit, healthy, resourceful, steely, determined, and have the ability to listen as well. But there are lots of physical and mental characteristics that I think people enter into senior executive positions not fully appreciating or understanding. And it can often create pressure points for mental stress and physical stress that can be their undoing or can cause them significant challenge.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that insight. So when you're talking about physical and mental well-being, it's important for both sides. Is that what you're saying? And how do you embody that? How do you keep fit? How do you keep your mind fit?
As you can probably see, I'm getting on in years now, quite a long way. So I came from the world of advertising. So I worked in advertising agencies for nearly 30 years during the 80s and into the 90s. And the largesse was considerable. The champagne corks were popping most days. And we did lots of silly things, 15, 16 hours a day most days. 14 years ago, I decided that I need to be a lot healthier. So I don't drink alcohol at all. I don't drink coffee. I walk between 6 and 10 miles a day. And I give myself mental breaks so that I can give up my best to others. I spend most of my days these days helping people and helping businesses. So in order to do that well, I need to be at my best. I have abstract things like I grow all of our fruit and vegetables on an allotment, which is quite big.
Amazing.
It requires some work, but it's one of those things where I never take my phone, I never wear a watch when I'm up there, and nobody cares who I am or what I've done. And that's just fine with me.
That's brilliant. So what are you growing up in the allotment at the moment?
Everything. I mean, everything. We've had strawberries, raspberries, loganberries, tayberries, blackberries, blackcurrant, red currant, white currant, every kind of vegetable, 4 different kinds of onions, every kind of brassica. It just goes on and on and on. It's a big plot. It's a big plot. So it's enough to feed my family for 6 to 8 months of the year, and in some things like tomatoes and sauces and potatoes and things for the whole year.
That's really impressive. Brilliant. I love it. So if you were thinking back into your career, I know you've had a long, interesting career. Was there one either a best coach or a most inspirational leader that you've had in that time?
I've been blessed to have exposure to some really impressive leaders. In my advertising career, I got exposure to people like Lord King, who ran British Airways. I spent time with Richard Branson. So I was able to, imbue some of the characteristics that he's got in terms of the way he runs businesses. Some really, really effective leaders, and obviously a number of individuals who are less evidently effective, and you learn from that as well. I think it's a question of observing, and for me, it's about consistency. And so it's practice what you preach, and that in its sense allows people to understand where they stand, and it's being encouraging. So yeah, you've got to be mindful of the best use of your time, but you've also got to be mindful of the fact that you learn from people and you learn from what's going on around you. So I hoover up knowledge and information. And then wherever possible, I try and put that to good effect.
So along that journey, learning from those amazing leaders, what have you learned about yourself in business?
I've learned I'm capable of lots of things, but I don't necessarily enjoy all of them. Okay. You know, I can write a full P&L in consummate detail,
yeah,
and to be numerically correct for any business to look at. And I'm good at that, but doesn't mean I enjoy it. I'm a strategist by trade, and so I'm most interested in the future and things that are happening that will affect us, that we need to be doing things about today in order to achieve those outcomes. So I've learned that I get bored with now, because now has already been ordained by what we did or should have done some time ago. So it's keeping a balance in that short, medium, and long term. But I'm enthused by the long term, and I'm enthused by the opportunity of possibility. And I'm particularly enthused by, on our watch at this time, we have a responsibility to make the world a better place for the generations that follow. And that in itself is really engaging and really inspiring.
And that was actually going to be my next question. What's inspiring you at the moment in the world at the moment? Is there anything in particular that stands out in the future that you look into that you think, yeah, that's the next thing to focus on?
Yeah, I'm privileged to be working with a number of companies that are doing amazing things that will make the world a better place. I'm chairman of a company called Hyde, which is an early stage business that has created the technology to prevent abuse online by not allowing it to be published in the first place. Some of the social platforms that require their communities to flag up when they see something abusive, and then they consider it and then they take it down. I have a real problem with that. The abuse should not appear in the first place, and the technology is there to stop it. So I'm privileged to work with Hyde because the technology there stops it being published across languages and right down to the subtlety of sarcasm, but including imagery as well. And we've got to be doing that. That's a very minimum requirement of us. The damage that abuse online has caused, particularly amongst young people, we allow that to happen. We are responsible for doing something about it. So there's that. I work with businesses very much into sustainability. Incredible companies like Tensei that are second harvest pioneers that will take straw and fruit pulp and avocado skins and make paper and laminate and the equivalent carbon fiber out of them, so that we don't need to chop trees down, and that we can keep.
What's the name of that business again?
Tensei, Tensei. Tensei is a remarkable company. Annabelle that runs it is an absolute pioneer in this area, and all businesses are behind where they should be and where they will need to be, and they're looking for pioneers that can create alternative materials out of second harvest, which is crop, stuff that we give to animals or we burn. And this company has the ability to do that. So it's being approached left, right, and centre by airlines and cars and supermarkets and heaven knows what else for packaging and for materials that are alternate to materials that require us to cut down trees. The fashion industry, is responsible for billions of trees being chopped down for cellulose, and they're obviously looking and need alternatives. So these are pioneering areas, and we're breaking new ground with them, but we're going to be able to achieve some remarkable things, and it's a real privilege to work with these people and these companies.
Okay, well, I was going to say if there's anything that you wanted to highlight, any news that you wanted to mention about business, but that's definitely one for people to go and have a look at, isn't it? Tensei, okay, you can have the link to that. Brilliant. So just looking to the future, what do you see as the main challenges moving forward for businesses?
If I look at it holistically, it's staying true to their real purpose, because the short-term pressures of balance sheet, pressures on the consumer, are going to impact on their business. It will impact on their employees because they're citizens, as we all are, but it will impact on their balance sheet primarily. And the challenge there is what decisions do you make in the short term that do not compromise your business and its integrity and do not compromise your long term? So how do you avoid making decisions that mortgage or potentially mortgage your own future? I recognize that surviving today is fundamental, but how you go about doing that is also key. So the alignment between the culture of the business, which is determined by its leadership, the apparent purpose of the business in the way that it operates, the products and services it delivers, and the respect it demonstrates for the consumer throughout that entire process is something that has to continue to exist consistently, no matter what businesses are embarking on. And the challenge for most businesses is that their consumers or their customers are moving far faster than they are.
Yeah.
And whilst we can use technology to track them, you've still got to be able to say the right thing in the right moment in the right context at that point. And businesses are struggling because when things get difficult, they start to look inward at what they can control. So pricing and leveraging staff and leveraging margins. And yet, you know, the real issue is external in terms of what is their consumer doing? And the challenge is how do they remain in harmony with what their consumers are doing? And how do they retain the respect in that order? Because that will solve many of their issues, short, medium, and long term. That's difficult. You've got to be brave and courageous, but it comes down to the culture of the leadership.
And you, with your business, are working with lots of leaders in 360. Are you seeing new leaders coming through with a different ethos that you've seen in the past?
Well, certainly in terms of placing people, absolutely. You know, one of the principles of our approach is that if a client writes a brief for us to find, you know, an MD or a CEO or something like that, let's say it's an MD, and the reason that they need an MD is because an MD has left. If they come to us and say, you know, here's the brief for the MD, and we say, well, what is it you're actually looking for? We really like our old MD. So if you can find someone like that, that would be great. We're going to turn that down. We're going to say we're not doing that job. Yeah. Because if they know what they want, they don't need us. They can go and find it themselves. But it tells us if they want more of the same, then they're not going to move forwards.
There's no forward looking. It's not forward looking. Yeah.
You need to bring something that is relevantly different into a business with every hire, not more of the same. More of the same doesn't move you forward. It just takes you out left and right. And so businesses that we support are the ones that know they need different, but don't know what the possibility of different might look like. And that could be anywhere between Sao Paulo and Shanghai. Mm-hmm. So it's recognizing that strategically for the business and for the individual, so that when you consider whether they can come together, they can, you know, converge because it's right for both. The challenge then is, can they sustainably stay relevant to each other? So as a business on the search side, putting people into jobs, frankly, is of very little interest to me. And yet it's the heart of that particular business. But it's of limited interest because that process is pure implementation. Mm-hmm. What we really care about and expect to be held accountable for is 12 months after they started, 24 months after they started, 36 months after they started. Yeah. Were the hopes and dreams and ambitions of that individual borne out by their actual experience? And was the contribution of that individual to the company such that the company was able to progress and develop in the way that it hoped to? It's about outcomes. It's not about the implementation of the process. Yeah. And that always gives you heart because it always keeps the possibility of opportunity open.
Thank you very much. I just got one final question, and it is, what would you recommend to any young person starting a business today?
When I looked to set up my first business and I was leaving agency, I was leaving a big job with lots of money and lots of stuff. I defined a BHAG for myself, right, as a strategy. The polite version is a big, hairy, audacious goal. Yes. So I defined a BHAG for myself, and it was really about being in a place where I only did what I wanted to do. I didn't have to do things I didn't want to do. So my BHAG was to work because I want to and not because I have to. I'm 60 now, and I'm working hard as ever because I love it. I don't have to do it, but I do it because I want to, because I love it. And I got myself in that place because that's what I set out to do. But when I was looking at setting up my first company, having been an employee for so many years, I remember I was traveling. I used to go to the rugby a lot, and I was traveling to Twickenham for one of the games. It was the same group of us that used to go. And it was Chris Wright, who owned Chrysalis Records and Wasps Rugby Club and QPR at the time. Richard Huntingford, who worked in the same operation, and Sir George Martin, who managed the Beatles. We used to sit in the minibus, go to the car park, go to the game, and then go to the pub afterwards. And I remember saying to the guys in the minibus, you're all really successful. You've all done remarkably well in your careers. I'm starting my first company, never done it before. Can you give me any advice? And dear Sir George Martin, who's sadly not with us anymore, he just leant in and he said, my dear boy, get great advice.
And that's what you were doing in that minibus.
Yeah, my initial reaction was, thanks very much, but that was the best thing he could have said. So to an 18-year-old, my 18-year-old,
Yeah.
Get as much advice as you can, make your own decisions. Don't make decisions born out of ignorance, because there's no excuse for that. Get as much advice as you possibly can to make confident decisions, and then don't prevaricate, make those decisions and get on with it.
Brilliant. Great advice. Thank you.